Welcome in to another season of NFL DFS First Look videos. I am your host, Ben Hostler. We are brought to you by rollinginsights.com, and I could not be more excited to be back. The summer is ending. Christmas Day, this Sunday, September 6th, is on the horizon, the first main slate of the NFL season. And I think this is year 8 or 9 of doing these videos. Shout out to you all for following along all these years. New company, new background. So shout out to you guys. We are in a new setup now for this season, and we're going to do what we always do. We are going to bring you my first look at the week 1 NFL DFS main slate over on DraftKings. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. We are looking to build up our YouTube following here at Rolling Insights, and make sure you hit the like button on this video. Let me know in the comments if you guys are back for another season, and let's get right into it. We have a nice 12-game slate on tap for the main slate. A lot of the good games are not on the main slate, though. We have Dallas and Philly off the main slate, Chargers, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, and then Vikings and Bears. All of those games are not featured on the main slate, and in typical week 1 fashion, we have a play whoever you want slate. And I love slates like this because I think this is where, if you're really in the trenches and you're really grinding, you just kind of play the best possible lineup and force your opponents to make mistakes. If you want to play the best team along with me, have at it. I'll take my chances and see if you're willing to do that, whether it comes down to, those head-to-heads, your cash games, whatever it may be. So we're going to dive right in and build a first look lineup for the week 1 slate, starting off at the quarterback position. Highest priced QB on the slate is Jayden Daniels at $7K. You then have Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, and CJ Stroud. That's your group of 6K and above quarterbacks, Daniels being the high men there at 7K. I do think, given the typical week 1 pricing that we are experiencing on DraftKings, that we're probably just going to plug in Jayden Daniels for your cash game rosters. He has the highest floor ceiling combination. He has a good matchup here at home against the New York Giants. New York Giants honestly should have a pretty good pass rush, but overall, we saw what Jayden Daniels can do last year, completely breaking onto the scene. And with the amount of value that is ever present on these week 1 slates across the board, I'll probably just plug him in to this first look lineup. If you don't want to use Jayden Daniels, I do think, obviously, Joe Burrow, notorious for starting slow. Cincinnati Bengals, notorious for starting slow. They are in one of the highest total games of the main slate this week. Cincinnati Bengals, Cleveland Browns. Yes, you heard that right. 47.5 total. That is above the Dolphins Colts at 46.5. It's tied with the Buccaneers and Falcons at 47.5. And it's tied with the Lions and Packers at 47.5. So if you look at all the games on this week 1 main slate, Bengals and Browns tied for the highest total. The Bengals made a conscious effort to really play their starters in the preseason to try and avoid this slow start that they've experienced the last few. And Joe Burrow, we know what he can do. So you have Joe Burrow right there. Baker Mayfield coming off a huge statistical season in a high total dome game against the Falcons. He's right there as well. Problem for me is they're a little too closely priced to Daniels, where we do get that rushing upside from Daniels that we're not going to get with Burrow or Mayfield. Same thing with Jared Goff. So that's why I ultimately would lean towards Daniels for this first look video. But if you want to go Burrow, Baker, any of those guys, I think that's fine. Lions, interesting situation. New offensive coordinator. Not really the type of team total we're accustomed to seeing from the Detroit Lions. It's a little bit lower. They are actually, underdogs here in Lambeau. Packers are -2.5 in this game. So it'll be interesting to kind of see the dynamic and flow of this offense in week 1. Moving down, Brock Purdy and Bo Nix down there in the low 6K range is a little interesting. And then I would probably skip all the way down, and we can talk about some of these cheaper options. So in typical, week one fashion, the pricing comes out a month or two ago. We can take advantage of that in tournaments and even cash games sometimes. I mean, there was once upon a time, I'm sure a lot of you guys have been around back when we would play cheaper quarterbacks in our cash game teams. That really hasn't been the case the last few years. But on week one, there's some cheap guys down here. When you think about Justin Fields has always been a good fantasy producer. Not saying that I really want to play him this week, but every time we've seen him as a starting quarterback, he has produced when it comes to fantasy points, and he is cheap there going against his former team in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Trevor Lawrence at 5,300. Probably one of the better spots on the slate for tournaments, in my opinion. Trevor Lawrence, honestly, if you go back and historically look, fits the mold of a Joe Burrow in that he starts the season very slow every single year. It takes him a few games to get going. I think that could change this year with Liam Cohen coming in, an actual sharp, smart offensive mind there in Jacksonville for once. When we think about Trevor Lawrence going from Urban Meyer back in the day and then coming in with Doug Peterson, who I still feel like had some older tendencies when it comes to his offense. This is new and fresh. Liam Cohen, fresh off of turning Baker Mayfield into a just monster fantasy producer. Trevor Lawrence has no shortage of weapons there. When you think of Brian Thomas Jr., all the three running backs that they have, Travis Hunter coming in as a top pick in the draft. So Trevor Lawrence at 5,300 at home looks like a pretty good play to me at 5,300. Daniel Jones starting for the Indianapolis Colts against what's probably going to be one of the worst defensive units in the NFL, in my opinion. I am not high on this Dolphins team this year, particularly in the secondary. Very, very exploitable. Colts at home, dome game. Daniel Jones has a little upside with his legs too, so 5,100 Daniel Jones, a little bit interesting. And then Joe Flacco down here at 4,900, I do think is going to end up being a decently popular quarterback option in small field, higher stakes contests. The Browns, when we saw Joe Flacco start for them previously, not last year, but the year prior, towards the end of the year, the Browns skewed extremely pass heavy. The Browns historically have been pretty run heavy under Kevin Stefanski as the offensive play caller there. Last year they switched that out, went to Ken Dorsey. He's gone, and it's back to Kevin Stefanski's offense. They have historically been a pretty run heavy team with him calling the plays, except for when Joe Flacco was starting. And the New York Jets experienced that as well. If you go back to when Joe Flacco made starts for the New York Jets in previous seasons, they skewed extremely pass heavy with him at the quarterback position as well. So I do think the Browns are going to call a pass heavy game plan here. They're underdogs in the game. The Bengals are going to have a bad defense as well. Make no mistakes. We saw it last year. They really didn't do anything to improve that defensive unit at all. I think they're very weak in the secondary, and Joe Flacco is comfortable in this offense and with these weapons when you think about Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, and those guys. So I like Joe Flacco at 4,900 for tournaments. Not someone I would look to play in cash, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he ended up getting higher ownership than expected in these smaller field contests just based off of that $4,900 price tag. Let's move over to the running back position with Jaden Daniels locked in to our quarterback in this first look lineup. The running backs are really cheap this week. You can see Bijan Robinson is the highest priced running back at 8K. You have Jahmyr Gibbs there at 77, Christian McCaffrey at 73, and then Bucky Irving at 71, Ashton Genty at 7K. Five guys, or six, what is that? Five guys priced above 7K. We saw early on last year, the NFL has shown a willingness to skew back and kind of return and run the football a little bit more than we've seen, in that kind of late 2010s, early 2020s. Kind of since the arrival of the Chiefs, these defenses have decided to sit back more, and the offenses realize that if these defenses are going to go, super light with their off-ball linebackers, and take these smaller, quicker linebackers that want to keep up with the passing games, it's going to be easier to run on those teams. And we saw those tendencies last year, especially early on in the season. Teams were more run heavy than expected. We could see that again this year, and these running backs are not priced up. So I'm going to be interested in the top tier of running back here, whether it be Robinson, Gibbs, McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, for me, sticks out as the top overall play on the entire slate. He's healthy, and there is no better setup for a player, in my opinion, than Christian McCaffrey this year. Whether or not he can stay healthy over the full course of the season remains to be seen. But starting off early on with a severe, just really, really refined weaponry for Brock Purdy, when you think about Brandon Ayuk is going to be out. Juwan Jennings did return to practice, so I expect him to play this weekend. But you're talking about Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall being his top options at receiver, along with George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey is going to be a huge, huge focal point of this offense. And 7,300 is just simply too cheap for someone that I haven't looked at any projections yet. It's Tuesday, but I already know, Christian McCaffrey is going to have one of the, if not the highest overall projection for any player on this week one main slate. So we're going to go ahead and plug Christian McCaffrey into this first look lineup. And then it kind of becomes, who do we want to pair up with him? I think there's a chance if everyone's going to put McCaffrey in, I think there's a chance Robinson and Gibbs come in a little bit lower owned than expected. I don't think if either of them gets that higher ownership tag, I think it would be Bijan Robinson there at 8K. Gibbs, I do think with Montgomery back could fly a little bit under the radar, especially because they're so much higher priced than anyone else. We have an absolutely loaded mid-tier at the running back position this week. Like, look at this list of names after Genty. You have Devon Achane there, assuming, he's healthy and ready to go. Achane, Taylor, Jacobs, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, even Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Kenneth Walker. Really, really strong 6K tier. And I do think that's ultimately where a lot of people will want to live. Plug in two of those 6K guys and move on, or pair one of those 6K guys with Christian McCaffrey. So slight chance that Bijan or Gibbs goes a little bit overlooked. I think both are good plays. Going to be interested to see Gibbs' role in this first game with the new offensive coordinator. Do they throw him more passes? Does he take a further lead over Montgomery? A lot of questions that will need to be answered. But overall, I think both of those guys are pretty good plays. Moving on down to this mid-tier, Bucky I think's fine. Genty I think's fine. Probably not where I would want to go in cash games, but I think both are more than fine options. If Achane didn't have this lingering calf issue, I think he would probably be my pick, just given the game environment, high total dome game. Don't really know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. I think with the absence of Jonnu Smith getting traded out, that could benefit Achane specifically in the red zone. Jonnu Smith, second on the team in red zone targets last year. So Achane, Waddle, those guys are going to have to soak up some of that red zone usage with his absence. So I think if Achane was fully healthy, and I know that, I think he's a strong consideration for the spot. I like Jonathan Taylor, just sticking with how bad I think this Miami defense is going to be. Home, slight favorite. We've saw Jonathan Taylor have some really big games down the stretch of last season, just to kind of remind people who he is as a running back and player. Chase Brown, going to have a really, really good role again for the Bengals this year. They brought in no one of consequence at the running back position. They still, got rid of Zach Moss. They drafted Taj Brooks late, who I think is the handcuff to Chase Brown. You'll probably see Samaje Perine, who they brought back, operate on, some longer third down looks. But I think it's going to be more of the same for Chase Brown. He's a 6-point favorite in this game. He has a pass game role. He has a red zone role. So I think Chase Brown is a more than capable option there. James Conner as a big favorite against what we expect to be a bad team in New Orleans. We saw him have some big games last year. A 29, 33, 22, 22, pretty consistent as a basically touchdown favorite here for James Conner. I think would fit in well. I'm going to go ahead and plug in Jonathan Taylor, but I'm good with any of these mid-tier options. I'm just going to plug in JT for now, but I like a lot of these mid-tier running backs this week. Moving down even farther, what's going to happen with Kenneth Walker's role? The coach speak coming out of Seattle has been extremely positive for Kenneth Walker in terms of what his role is going to be in this offense this year. You guys got to think new offensive coordinator there as well. Clint Kubiak coming in. Clint Kubiak has been always good. Actually, we don't even have to just extrapolate just Clint Kubiak. Any Kubiak calling plays has always been beneficial for the running backs in that system. We saw Alvin Kamara have a monster season with Kubiak calling plays for the Saints last year. And the coach speak has been very positive in favor of Kenneth Walker. I know he dealt with some injuries throughout camp and the preseason, but he's good to go here. 5,900, pretty low price tag. I'm interested there. Tony Pollard with no Tyjae Spears. I know it's a road game in Mile High. They're big underdogs in Cam Ward's first ever start, but I'm high on this Tennessee Titans team. I don't think there's a team in the NFL that improved their offensive line more from last season to this season. And when you think about the Denver Broncos defense, it's one of the best defensive units in the NFL. There's no question. But where was their main weakness last year? It was defending the run. Think back to what the Buffalo Bills did to them in that playoff game. James Cook just ran it down their throat. And they made a conscious effort to address the middle linebacker safety position of their defense and improve that run defense this year. Will that be the case immediately right off the rip? I don't know. But I know that Tony Pollard is going to have a locked-in role. And at 5,700, I think for tournaments, he is a fantastic play this weekend at 5,700. Tyrone Tracy's going to be the starter for the Giants, at least to begin the season. What happens in Cleveland? Quinshon Judkins has yet to report to the team. Even if he gets there after this video comes out, what can you really expect from him having missed the entirety of training camp in the preseason? So I think you're going to see Jerome Ford. I think you're going to see Dylan Sampson. If you can hit on who gets the majority of the work for the Browns, could be decent leverage off of the Browns passing game in a high total. So I don't think that's a terrible spot to look for tournaments. Trevion Henderson, what's his role going to be? I'm very excited for him, but kind of tempering my expectations a little bit to begin the season. Jaylen Warren, 5,200 looks like a good tournament option to me. I do think he will lead the Steelers backfield to start the season. We'll have a pass catching role as well. 5,200 seems a little bit cheap. Houston, no Joe Mixon this week or the first couple games for the Texans. So who takes over there? I kind of still think it's going to be Dameon Pierce, who's down here at 4,700. If you had to ask me who I thought was going to lead the backfield in touches this weekend, Dameon Pierce would probably be my pick. So that's my thoughts there. What goes on in Washington? They traded Brian Robinson Jr. away. Chris Rodriguez, Bill Krosky Merritt, who everyone that drafts best ball teams and season-long teams is over the moon excited for. What kind of goes on there? The problem is with it being week one and how the pricing is, you really don't need to dip down to this low tier of running back for cash games. So it's just going to inherently make all these cheaper running backs GPP plays. But if I had to pick a cheap running back, it'd probably be Jaylen Warren, honestly, at 5,200. Lots of unknowns entering week one. Maybe he has a bigger role than people think, which I think is a possibility. And, you could get ahead of that at a pretty nice price tag there of 5,200. Moving on to the receiver position, tons of great options here at the top. Chase, Nakua, Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Tyreek, Mike Evans, Drake London, T. Higgins, just stacked from 6K up to 8K. So who we want to put in here kind of comes down to roster construction. Honestly, can't go wrong with Jamar Chase. Can't go wrong with Puka Nakua, Nico Collins, any of these guys, really. I'm going to plug in Brian Thomas Jr. just because I think he should be priced closer to this Nico Puka range, and he's down below 7K. So I'm going to plug him in for the first look video. Obviously coming off just monster rookie season, big bump up this year. Entering his second season, which is huge for receivers. How often do we see receivers take big leaps in their second season? I would say that is frequent, but hard for him to take a massive gap just because he was already very good last year. But continuity with Trevor Lawrence, and like I spoke about when I talked about Lawrence earlier, big offensive bump for him going to this Liam Cohen system. You also have the chance that Travis Hunter maybe doesn't play as much as we think early on in the season. With him playing offense and defense, maybe his snaps are limited a little bit. It's an unknown situation. But I like Braun Thomas Jr. there a lot at 6,800. The next guy I want to plug in is Drake London at 6,500. And that's going to really constrain our salary here. But if you guys think back to last season, Drake London was arguably the best receiver in fantasy after Jamar Chase once Michael Penix Jr. entered as the starting quarterback. He got absolutely fed. Look at these from, I think it was week 15 when he took over, or it may have been week 16. I can't remember. But look at the 3 games to close the season here, 8, 13, and 18 targets. Just absolutely monster performances. Michael Penix, I'm high on this Falcons team. Obviously, concerning they got a little bit of a banged up offensive line coming into this week, but not something I want to overrate. I think Drake London at 6,500 is a more than fine price tag. Cortland Sutton at 6K sticks out. Jalen Waddle at 57. If he can kind of usurp Tyreek Hill, getting ahead of this price tag, there's a chance Jalen Waddle has a monster game on Sunday and we don't see him at 5,700 again this season. So felt like I should note that. Jameson Williams at 55, someone I'm high on this season. I think he is going to take another step forward. I think that Detroit is going to be more pass heavy as a team. I don't think they're going to be as good as a team. So it's not going to be them just running out the clock later in these games. I think just going to the new OC, they're going to want to pass the ball a little bit more anyways. And that is going to be a beneficiary. Jameson Williams is going to be the beneficiary of that, in my opinion. And I don't think there's been a player that's gotten more positive speak from his coaching staff all offseason than Jameson Williams. They sound very, very excited for him. And I think this $5,500 price tag is exceptional. Moving on down. Jerry Jeudy in that situation with Joe Flacco is fine. Deebo Samuel at 5,200, someone that Matt, who comes on the videos a lot, is interested in. I'm interested too. I think that with the kind of uncertainty at the running back situation for Washington, I think Deebo Samuel can fill a void there in the red zone. Would not be shocked to see him get some red zone carries or like end arounds in this game in the red zone. Terry McLaurin coming back late in camp after that contract holdout. If you think back to last season, CeeDee Lamb was a pretty notable holdout. And CeeDee Lamb has some of the most continuity of any player in the NFL. He's always played with Dak Prescott at quarterback since he's been in the NFL. And he himself said that him and Dak struggled early on in the season after that contract holdout. They struggled with the new installs in the offense, and just to get on it took him a little bit to get on the first page. I would view CeeDee Lamb as a better receiver than Terry McLaurin. And I also think that Dak Prescott, obviously just more of a veteran presence than Jaden Daniels at this stage. So would it be shocking to see Terry McLaurin start the season a little bit slow? I don't think so. And again, Deebo Samuel could be a beneficiary of that. So $5,200 for Deebo Samuel in a game I think Washington is going to score is interesting. Would fit well with a stack with Jaden Daniels, our quarterback. And then we can move down a little bit lower. Just really, really nice price tags on some of these younger players. Matthew Golden, the rookie coming in, should lead Green Bay in targets at 4,900. Emeka Egbuka, I think, is probably going to be the highest owned receiver on the slate. $4,600, just a clear mispricing. Chris Godwin probably not going to play in this game. Jalen McMillan is already out. After Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka is going to be the second highest, maybe first highest target earner on this team. Egbuka, someone I was really high on coming out of Ohio State. I thought he was the most polished receiver in this draft class. You can go fact check that on my Twitter. I said I had him at wide receiver 2 back in like January of this year. I said that. And then the Buccaneers proved me right, drafting him inside the top 20. I don't know if anybody mocked him inside the 20. I think that was a little bit of a surprise pick from the Buccaneers there. So expecting a really big season for him. And 4,600 is just too cheap. So I think ultimately, he's going to be very, very high owned this week. Going down even further, there's some other cheap guys that we can look at. Ricky Pearsall at 45 is way too cheap. Would not be shocked to see him lead the 49ers in targets on Sunday at just 4,500. And then there's more like tournament options down here. Pop Douglas at 42 should be the Patriots slot receiver. Going back to that Josh McDaniels offense, I'm a little bit interested in him for tournaments. Dante Thornton Jr., an exciting rookie. Not really the spot I want to look for him, but definitely a name to keep your eye on this season at 3,600. And then Troy Franklin, I think could play a pretty decent role for the Broncos. Tennessee, more of a pass funnel defense in recent years. I do think that will probably maintain coming into this season. So that's a cheaper option. Dontavian Wicks, don't want to play him, but I do think he'll play a good bit for the Packers with Jaden Reed dealing with this Jones fracture. So lots of cheap receiver options. We can go ahead and let's just plug in a cheap defense. We'll just put the Texans in for now to fill out this roster. We then have a tight end and a flex. So starting off at tight end, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride. Really don't need to dive into those guys much. I think both are good plays. Trey McBride, has been a hot candidate when it comes to season long this year, talking about whether or not he'll see this positive touchdown regression or not. He barely scored any touchdowns last year. George Kittle, I think, is a fantastic tournament play this week. If we think about Mike McDonald and his defense, Seattle should be a very, very good defense this year. They play a lot of too high, and that can leave the middle of the field open, which is great for George Kittle. He had a lot of success against this Mike McDonald defense last year. So George Kittle at 5,800. Interesting tournament play for me, especially if you want to pivot off of McCaffrey, or I think you could use him alongside McCaffrey and really just kind of soak up what I expect to be a lot of the production from the 49ers in this game. David Njoku, great tournament play at 4,700 with Flacco back. We know that Njoku was basically his favorite target when we saw Flacco start a few seasons ago, and we know it's a good matchup. I talked about that earlier on. Tyler Warren, the rookie coming in from the Colts. I think you're going to see a very, very unique role from him this season. I think he could come in and have a couple pass attempts maybe in certain games. I think he could get some carries. Very, very unique player, and I'm excited about him. I think 4,400 is a pretty good price tag there. Tucker Kraft, would not be shocked if he's the second highest target earner on the Packers this weekend. Like I said, Jaden Reed dealing with a serious injury, and it seems like it's pretty set. It's going to be Golden and Dubs in these two wide receiver sets. So, I think Golden will lead the team in targets. Maybe Tucker Kraft comes in second. Maybe some weeks he leads the team in targets. I don't really know, but I think 4K is a pretty good price tag there. And then we get into the cheaper guys. I think Okonkwo and Strange both will be on the field a lot for their respective offenses. So those are some pretty good cheaper plays. And then we have Harold Fannin down here at 3,100. If you want to get really crazy in larger field, I do think you could use Fannin with Flacco as a pivot off of Njoku. I think you could use them. I think you go double tight end and use them together. And I'm going to tell you why. I messaged Matt and a few others earlier this offseason when the Browns drafted him. First of all, I was pretty high on him coming out of the draft. But I think the Browns made a point to pick him. Kevin Stefanski, going back to that Kevin Stefanski offense this year, he's always been a very, very heavy 12 personnel user. And if you look at the roster moves that the Browns made in terms of who they released, I think Harold Fannin is going to be on the field a lot immediately. So 3,100 is a good price tag there for tournaments. I'm going to just plug in Brenton Strange, I think, or Chig Okonkwo for this lineup and kind of see. Maybe we could move down somewhere else. But for now, I'll just plug him in. And that would give us 5,200 to fill out this last position. If we're looking at the guys I spoke about that I like in this range, Jaylen Warren, obviously right there at 5,200. Deebo Samuel right there at 5,200 as well. Matthew Golden, Ricky Pearsall. Michael Pittman, didn't mention him. I think he's a really good play there at 4,900. So lots of options for us here. I'll go ahead and fill in with Deebo, just fitting with the Jaden Daniels stack. And there you have it. Our first look lineup of the season. Jaden Daniels, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Brian Thomas Jr., Drake London, Emeka Egbuka, Brenton Strange, Deebo Samuel, and the Houston Texans defense. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're looking to grow up the Rolling Insights YouTube channel here. So drop a follow, like the video. Let me know in the comments if you're excited for the season, and let me know your thoughts on the first look lineup. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see everybody next week for week 2.